This video is about why you keep speaking to yourself in ways you would never speak to someone you love and what you can do about it. I'm Dimitris, I have a background in psychology, and in my sessions I help many people with this same issue. We will look at the difference between constructive and pathological self-criticism, the two common forms that it gets, which is the merciless judge and the perfectionist, and how self-criticism keep you stuck. In the end, I'll share with you a practical method on how to stop it. If you ever wondered why you cannot be just nicer to yourself, this video will explain it. First, we have to talk about the self-criticism that destroys you. Have you ever noticed how you talk to yourself when you make a mistake? Not when you do something catastrophic, but when you do something small. When you're a bit late with a project, when you say something awkward in a conversation, when you don't get something right the first time. For most of us, the answer is that we speak really badly to ourselves. We speak with harshness. We speak with contempt. You're an idiot, you're lazy, you're worthless, you'll never make it. There's something wrong with you. This is the voice, that's the voice of pathological self-criticism. And it isn't just uncomfortable, it's destructive. It limits what you pursue, it keeps you trapped in chronic negative emotions, and it makes real change impossible. But before we go further, I want to remind you that this is educational content. Is not therapy. If you feel you need professional support, reach out to a specialist. So, constructing versus pathological criticism. See, not all self-criticism is harmful. Constructive self-criticism identifies imperfections, it identifies mistakes or behavioral patterns that are not working for you and shows you how to correct them. It tells you that this behavior doesn't work and here's why and here's what you can do differently. On the other hand, pathological self-criticism is something entirely different. It has two key characteristics. First, instead of identifying a specific weakness, it fixates on a flaw and uses it as a proof that you are entirely and irreparably defective. If you feel anxious in social situations, instead of recognizing that social ease is a skill that you can develop, pathological self-criticism labels you as a failure. It doesn't say, oh, I need to go and work on this. It says, I am defective. The second is that while constructive self-criticism is grounded in accepting human flaws, pathological self-criticism is merciless. Understanding is absent. Compassion is absent. Your psyche becomes a courtroom where one part of yourself punishes the part that deemed inadequate. So let's talk about the first mask that pathological self-criticism wears, and that is the merciless judge. You see, in ancient Athens, Draco wrote laws so harsh that death was enforced even for minor theft. This is where the word draconian comes from. The same draconian logic appears in pathological self-criticism inside your head. A moment of weakness, a small mistake, an afternoon of procrastination, an awkward social misstep is usually met with self-contempt. The punishment bears no proportion to the crime. This vindictive quality leaves behind it depression and, in extreme cases, suicidal ideation. Depression is often caused by anger turned against yourself. Now, the second mask that self-criticism wears is the perfectionist. You see, not all pathological self-criticism takes the form of the merciless judge. Sometimes it comes from perfectionism, when you believe you must excel everywhere at all costs, when you perform flawlessly, when you never make a mistake, and when you tie your worth to relentless productivity, failure becomes inevitable. And when this becomes your pattern, you only recognize failures and weaknesses and never strengths. You're always ready with two thumbs down, never ever with a thumbs up. Almost nothing you do gives you a sense of success. It's never enough. And now let's talk about the cost of pathological self-criticism, because pathological self-criticism isn't just uncomfortable. It's a force that actively shapes your life. It limits what you believe is possible. Because when you judge yourself catastrophically, you're evaluating your eligibility to participate in the world. When you condemn yourself as stupid, you're saying that you're incapable of achieving success. When you label yourself as unlovable, you're declaring yourself unwanted for friendships or love. And the thing is that from these negative self-evaluations, the only thing that follows is avoidance. You refrain from making friends, you refrain from pursuing relationships, going after your goals, because your fear that failure will confirm the verdict that you have already issued overtakes all of your actions. Self-criticism then becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. There's a scene in the Peanuts comic where Charlie Brown sees a girl and thinks, oh, I would like to go over and talk to her so much, but I cannot because I'm nothing and she is something. See, the girl never rejected him. He rejects himself preemptively based on the judgment he has made about his own worth. The other thing that self-criticism does is that it creates chronic negative emotions. You see, when you repeat that you are a failure, depression follows. And when you believe you're incapable of meeting your life's demands, then anxiety takes root deep inside you. When self-criticism targets your social skills, it produces shame. When, on the other hand, it focuses on moral failures, what it does inside you is that it creates guilt. And you have to remember that people become depressed largely because they subject themselves to harmful self-critical actions. Another thing that self-criticism does is that it makes you hypersensitive and makes change impossible. How does it do that? You see, when you attack yourself, you more easily accept other people's criticism as objectively correct. Your life then becomes a continuous effort to avoid criticism instead of following what you truly want. And the most destructive part that comes out of all this is that pathological self-criticism makes real change impossible because it contains condemnations that offer neither a diagnosis nor a guidance on where you want to go. You cannot change when you're being crushed, and you cannot learn when you're being condemned. Now, before we talk about the solution, we have to talk about the obstacles to the change that we want. And we need to understand deeply those obstacles because it will help us identify them when we see them on our path. So obstacle number one is that self-criticism operates unconsciously. This pathological self-criticism, it doesn't come to your conscious awareness. For many people, it begins in our childhood through internalizing a criticism that we heard from our parents or at school. Over the years, this thing that we heard becomes so familiar that we no longer have conscious awareness of what we are doing. And through time, you don't need to consciously decide to attack yourself. It just happens automatically. And when something happens automatically, it is invisible. You don't see it as something you're doing. You see it as something that's happening to you. The second obstacle is that it makes us feel like a victim because self-criticism is driven by unconscious processes that makes us often feel like victims. And this happens with all subconscious processes because they seem to happen to us without us having chosen them. But this victimization hides a fundamental fact that a part of you is also doing the criticizing. You're simultaneously the prosecutor and the accused, the judge and the convicted. And until you recognize this, that you're not just passive recipient, but an active creator, you will remain powerless to change it because victims don't have a choice. But when you understand that you are doing it, then you suddenly have the power to change it. Now let's talk about the paradoxical solution. And why am I saying paradoxical? Because this part might confuse you. See, when most of us try to stop self-criticism, we approach it like this. We try to stop it. We try to fight it. We try to suppress it. But this doesn't work. The more you try to suppress an unconscious process through sheer willpower, the more it resists. The method that is proven to be more effective is that you need to keep doing it, but consciously and deliberately. Yes, you heard me right. Instead of trying to stop self-criticism, you will try to do it on purpose. You'll bring it from your unconscious to your conscious. And why this works is because pathological self-criticism gets its power because it remains outside of our conscious awareness. So as long as it operates from there, it operates automatically. So you treat it as something that is happening to you. But when it's deliberately brought into your awareness, what once was unconscious becomes something that you voluntarily do, you choose to modify and you choose to abandon. So when you self-criticize unconsciously, you are a victim. But when you do it consciously, you are responsible. And responsibility gives you power. So how to apply this in practice? Next time you catch yourself self-criticizing, don't try to stop it. Instead, do these things. First, observation. Observe it. See it. Say, okay, it's happening again. I see I'm about to attack myself, or I am attacking myself. The voice is starting, you're an idiot, you'll never make it, etc., etc. So observe it. Know that it's happening. The second thing is do it deliberately. Instead of letting it unfold, take control of it and say, okay, now I'm going to self-criticize consciously, voluntarily. And then do it knowing that you're choosing to do it. The third thing is that you need to watch yourself what you're doing. Say, right now, I am choosing to tell myself I am a failure. I am choosing to treat this mistake as a proof that I am worthless. And that gives you power, because the fourth step is that you have to realize that you have a choice. When you bring the process into the light of consciousness, something changes. You start to see that this is not something that is happening to you. You start seeing that you are doing it. And if you can choose to do it, you can choose to stop it. And the obstacle that you might face when you bring that to your consciousness is that other little voice that says, yeah, but it's true. Indeed, I'm not really good enough for XYZ. And maybe your self-criticism contains some elements of truth, definitely. But here's the key. Recognizing an unpleasant truth does not require for you to respond with harshness. Your insights about yourself do not require self-punishment. So how do we move from condemnation to acceptance? Carl Jung once wrote that we cannot change anything unless we accept it. Condemnation does not liberate, it oppresses. And Carl Rogers said that the curious paradox is that when I accept myself, only then I can change myself. When you observe yourself then slipping into self-criticism instead of condemning yourself, accept the fact that you're doing it. Accept the flaws and try to engage with the practice consciously. Because if you can start training yourself slowly but steadily to meet your self-critical practices with awareness and compassion, what was once an internal war zone of your psyche will gradually transform into a zone of self-acceptance and peace. You see, when people abandon this pathological self-critic that we all hide inside, the consequences remain. And what do I mean by that? I mean that your self-esteem strengthens, not because you suddenly believe you're perfect, but because you stop treating every flaw as proof that you're worthless. The other thing that happens is that your sense of eligibility for relationships, for jobs, for opportunities increases. Remember what Charlie Brown did? He didn't go to speak to the girl because he condemned himself. Remember what Charlie Brown said to himself? I cannot go talk to her because I am nothing. So when you stop this pathological self-criticism, this sentence changes. From I cannot go and talk to her because I'm nothing, it becomes I can go and talk to her, she might reject me, and that's not the end of the world because it will not destroy me. So you're less vulnerable to other people's criticisms. You can also recognize positive things about yourself without immediately canceling them. And you're also more capable of making changes because constructive change requires self-acceptance and not self-condemnation. And let me be clear, this is not something that you do once and it's done. It's solved. It's a process that you continuously have to do again and again, because self-criticism has very deep roots. And there will be days when you will return to these old patterns, and that is normal. It is not failure. Because what changes isn't the fact that self-criticism will disappear completely, entirely, forever. It's that you start noticing it faster. You start to recognize it. And after you recognize it, you start having choices about how you respond. And over time, slowly and gradually and with compassion, this pattern loosens. The voice becomes gentler, the judge becomes more understanding. And you have to think that most of us make a genuine effort to treat others with patience and respect and understanding and kindness. But when it comes to ourselves, we fail to do the same thing. So this video is an invitation to change that, to bring the same compassion you offer to others to yourself. As Theodore Rubin said, the serious, deep commitment to being kind to yourself and gentle to yourself must be invoked again and again. Every day, every time, this old voice returns. And every time you choose compassion over condemnation, you strengthen a new neural pathway in your brain. And that's how you build new behaviors. You build a new way of being with yourself. This is the work, and it's worth it. If you found this useful, leave a comment, hit like, and subscribe to my channel. I'm Dimitris. I have a psychology background, and I share psychology-based tools and ideas on how to design a well-lived life. And if you want to have a session with me, you'll find all the details below. See you in the next one.